All right, time now for our PIX panel, and joining me this week, PIX Health and political reporter Ayana, from the Gotham Gazette, Ben Max, and from City and State New York, Rebecca Lewis. So good to have all of you here this morning. And I want to start with last week's shooting near the home of New York gubernatorial candidate Lee Zeldin. Zeldin's family's okay, but rightfully shaken by the whole ordeal, and it's really put gun violence once again at the center of this campaign, right? So here's what both candidates had to say, and then we'll talk about it.
If you were to talk to people about what they care about right now, they are talking about safety on our streets. They're talking about safety on our subways.
And it's a reminder we all have to work together to get guns off the streets.
So, Rebecca, I want to begin with you here because you actually wrote an article last week that this is an opportunity for Zeldin, saying his family experienced the clearest possible illustration of the problem. So, Rebecca, how does the incident affect the race with less than a month to go?
You know, it definitely gives Zeldin a more personal touch, a more personal note to bring this debate around crime on. Before, you know, this has been a keystone, a cornerstone of his campaign, very much focused on crime and the rise in crime and people feeling unsafe in New York City, especially. But now he is able to come to it with this personal touch, where his family was very close to this gun violence. It happened right on his doorstep. His daughters were home. They experienced this. They saw this happen. They call 911, you know, and it's very possible that for some, you know, swing voters in the suburbs who might have been on the fence about who to vote for, whether to vote based on, you know, national issues like abortion or, well, abortion's the big one for suburban, especially suburban women. Right. But, you know, this might now push some of those swing voters closer to Zeldin, you know, as a reminder that, you know, crime is a big issue. Crime isn't just a thing in New York City that can, you know, happen in, you know, the suburbs too.
Yeah, but Dan, I will just jump in and say, yes, this issue may help push some swing voters towards Lee Zeldin, but I don't know if it will push enough voters for Zeldin to ultimately win this race. We've seen recent polling from Marist just a few days ago that still shows about a 10 percentage point gap, you know, with Kathy Hochul in the lead. Will this swing 10% of votes to Lee Zeldin? I'm not quite sure if it will do that. Lee Zeldin has been talking about crime. This isn't the first time on the campaign trail that, you know, crime and violence has hit home close to Lee Zeldin. We'll remember that campaign stop. So, yes, I do think it will help raise awareness about crime issues, bring some more voters to Lee Zeldin, but I don't know if it will be enough to secure a victory for him next month.
Well, and to your point, Ayana, Ben, he's seemingly not changing his position on any of the gun legislation that's out there in the discussion surrounding tighter gun laws.
Yeah, I think here's the question for Lee Zeldin. I think Ayana is exactly right. I think the Marist polling that we just saw a few days ago is fairly hopeful for him because it's closer than some of the other polling we've seen, but he needs to start really polling more voters. Rebecca was saying maybe some of those suburban swing voters, maybe this helps a little bit, but it gets at sort of the challenge of Lee Zeldin's campaign, which is that he hasn't been offering a wide enough vision, and he hasn't been offering sort of the maybe center-right vision that is the most hopeful for a Republican to win statewide in New York, and that really gets at the crux of the challenge for him. Yeah, and then back, you know, to something Rebecca touched upon earlier, Governor Hochul announcing more funds for abortion providers. So, you know, do you see this, I guess, as her strategy to keep women's reproductive health care in the front of everybody's mind?
No, absolutely. You know, ever since the overturning of Roe v. Wade, the governor has really made that a focal point of her campaign to hit Zeldin for his past statements about abortion, for saying that he would appoint a pro-life, anti-abortion health commissioner, even though he's since walked back those comments. You know, really focusing on some of the national issues here. Abortion is a big one. First female governor, you know, a mother, a grandmother. It really hits home for her, and is, you know, just as the shooting near Zeldin's home has made, you know, the crime issue particularly personal for him, the abortion issue is particularly personal for, you know, New York's first female governor, first mother governor, first governor with, you know, daughters and granddaughters who will be directly impacted by this decision.
Let me talk about this topic of guns right now, because we're talking a lot about violence, right? And Mayor Adams went ahead and signed the ban on guns in Times Square, other sensitive locations last week into law, despite some legal challenges, right? And there are plenty of them. So, Ayana, how is the mayor able to move forward with this, and can we expect more legal pushback?
Yeah, legal challenges are already underway. There is a pending case in the Second Circuit Court of Appeals that's going on right now. So essentially, New York State lawmakers enacted several new gun restrictions throughout the state, really, not just here in New York City, on September 1st in response to a recent Supreme Court ruling. But, gun advocates, ownership advocates have said that the New York State lawmakers, they overreached, they went too far. And so this is all still playing out within the court. So yes, new legislation, new restrictions have gone into place, but they may not stay there. So we just really have to watch the courts and see how this all unfolds.
We are rapid fire, tight on time. Ben, I want to give you the last word here and talk about the migrant crisis continuing in New York City, right? The tent encampment still going up on Randall's Island, but now the mayor is saying that this really could pop up anywhere. So what are we learning from the mayor in terms of locations, and are hotels still a viable option?
They are. They've been using dozens of hotels. They just announced another in Manhattan would be used for families and children for emergency purposes. Again, temporary, like the Randall's Island location for singles. So there's going to be more and more locations announced. And really the biggest thing that we're watching for, along with exactly where and how and services provided, is when the federal government is really going to come in here with more help. That's the big question mark right now.
And that is certainly the big ask from the mayor, right? We need money and we need it fast. Ben, Ayana, and Rebecca, thank you so much for being here on the panel.